Missoula Osprey.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana, KKVU HD3 Stevensville, and 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. It's 4 o'clock. Welcome to Montana's only statewide sports talk show. Broadcast on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Western Montana and across the state on SWX Television.
I like football!
Now, the 2017 Radio Sports Broadcaster of the Year on the show with back-to-back Montana Broadcaster Association awards for sports coverage and award-winning sports journalism. Here is Ryan Tutel and Colter Nuanez.
First Big Sky breakdown for the 2019 season.
Right.
You can check that out tomorrow, SkylineSportsMT.com. Haven't told Ryan yet, but it'll be his responsibility to produce and upload it because I will be gone. I'll be on the highway. Regardless, I thought it was a very good...
I'm not doing it.
Ryan has produced all sorts of Skyline Sports content today.
Jeez
I am
Louise.
very proud of him. He wrote a column.
I'm exhausted.
It only took him 17 hours. He also talked about a variety of very wide-ranging, broad, and deep topics from pregnancy test to the meaning of college football on the Big Sky.
Which are kind of one and the same, actually.
Regardless, no, I honestly, sometimes Ryan and I prepare big time, and sometimes we don't. And today, we opened up the mics and just talked about college football
on the podcast
as a whole on
Yeah.
the podcast, and we talked about what it means. Why is it so important? Why does it resonate with us so much? Why does it make us feel the way that we do? And I thought it was a really good conversation that we had. So check that out, SkylineSportsMT.com. We'll have that up tomorrow, leading up to Montana's game at South Dakota. But I've been in a good mood ever since then because I thought it was a good conversation.
Well, it was a good conversation. We can probably delve into little parts of it here as well because it's no longer the eve of football. It is football day. It's happening right now. Kickoff, Cincinnati, UCLA, followed by Utah, BYU on ESPN television. And if you want to see a really close game, Texas A&M will play Texas State on the SEC Network. You can go check that out. Believe me.
33.5?
I got it on the record, my friend. 33.5. Well, give me the Aggies. Colter, by the way, we are going to pull names out. We did get started on the Rams at the end of the show yesterday. We have not forgotten about that. Colter had them at 4-2 going into the 7th game of the season, so we will finish out what he thinks the Rams' schedule is going to be, where they're going to hang out and end up. At the top of the hour, excited about this, our ESPN Roundtable. If you caught it yesterday, if not, we will have it for you again. Sean Rainey, the subject of our Roundtable discussion this week. Obviously, Sean is a good friend of the show, an outstanding television sports broadcaster, in fact, the sports broadcaster of the year for television across the state of Montana. And he sat down with us to talk to us about what he does. And I think he comes from a unique perspective because Colter, you and I are, native Montanans, and so there's people who get a tie to this place and stick around. There's a lot of people, though, who come into small markets, not just in Montana, but are all over the place, especially in media, as a place to kind of gut your teeth, learn a little bit, get some experience, and then move on to the, up the ladder, as it were. Whether it's actually up is an open question, but down the ladder, depending. But Sean is a guy who grew up in Southern California, but in a small town. He did not grow up in the Los Angeles or San Diego basin. He's up in the mountains there, but came to Montana to go to the University of Montana, but got into sports journalism and has stayed in Montana and is probably certainly one of the longest-standing Montana sports anchors and sports journalists around for television, and continues to be here and do great work and make it his home. And I think it's a cool discussion that we had with him. So we'll have that for you at the top of the hour, and we will, of course, talk about our predictions for this weekend because Colter is not here tomorrow, so we will do that today as well. Colter, now are you leaving today or are you leaving tomorrow?
No, I'm leaving early in the morning. I've been up till 3:30 in the morning, 4 nights in a row now. But
4? You mean your entire adult life?
No, I'm a 12:31 a.m. guy.
Okay, 3:30 is pretty late.
Because you got this new job for me where I actually have to show up places before 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
You're well. It's also interesting to get a paycheck, isn't it? Kind of a new thing for you.
Yeah, you're right. The direct deposit via PayPal straight to the bank account.
Nice looking shirt you got.
Yeah. Well,
you're welcome.
I'll teach you how to shop someday.
I only wear free stuff.
Clothes he found in the road.
Yeah.
No, I have a couple more stories I got to produce tonight, and then we're hitting the road to the gorge. But
you're going to Dave Matthews Band for
I am
3 in a row for the whole deal.
I actually cannot do the full 3.
Okay.
I have the only thing in the world that's more important to me than Dave Matthews. That's actually not true. There's a lot of things that are more important to me. But I love Dave Matthews for sure.
Yes.
But but my nephew's 3rd birthday.
Oh,
Sunday.
my
By the way,
gosh.
4 o'clock. You're invited. PM
Sunday.
Yep.
Well, I'm also going to be in the city of Washington.
You'll be in the Yakima. Okay. Oh, you'll be right up the road from me. Mm-hmm. Maybe I'll call you, tell you to come pick me up.
You fall asleep in an inner tube and just come on downstream, and you will end up on somewhere near where I'm at, man. That's easy enough.
Yeah. So I'm hitting Friday and Saturday at the Gorge.
Okay,
Dave
good.
Matthews. Everybody that's listened to this show knows that I have a great affinity for Dave Matthews. I think the authenticity of the Dave Matthews Band live is tremendous, and this is a I don't want to call it a once in a lifetime, but it's a first in a lifetime for me. My group of longtime friends have been making the, as they call it, pilgrimage to the Gorge every Labor Day weekend to see Dave Matthews since about 2006. And I've never been able to go because even when I was 19, 20 years old, I was always covering a football game. Mm-hmm. Montana has opened up at home every year that I can ever remember. And last year, I was able to go for just Sunday, and it was epic. It was impactful. It was great. It was very, very satisfying and freeing for me. But this year is the first year I can ever remember. Because here's the thing, FCS football depends on playing FBS games across the board, except for a very select few schools. And the Montana schools happen to be lucky enough where they do not depend on the FBS payday to maintain their budgets.
Even though they're both going to get one.
And they're both going to get one. And sometimes you do need it. And it's not as if the Cats and the Grizz are completely abstaining from playing FBS games, but it's not essential. Whereas Portland State does not have football if they don't play at least
one. The point
one,
is you get some home openers when you're doing that.
You always get home openers because most
Yeah.
Montana State, it's all about doing the math, right? The Grizz are going to get paid $675,000 to go to Oregon. A gate against a home gate against, say Monmouth. It nets University of Montana $250,000, $300,000. So you have to equate it. You have to get that Oregon or that Texas Tech payday for it to be worth it. Going and playing Idaho or whatever, not worth it. Except for Jeff Choate played Idaho his first game for natural reasons. He's from St. Mary's. He wants to open up there. But what I'm saying is that either the Cats or the Griz have almost, for the 13 years I've been doing this, have had home games on the opening weekend. So I've never been able to go to the Friday and Saturday Dave Matthews. Well, this time, just because of budget reasons and a variety of things, it just worked out where they're both on the road. And have no fear, I will have my computer. I will be following the action. I have the whole thing already all planned out. But I thought, man, if I can hit Friday night, if I can get my normal content load out before I leave, and then I can hit the Friday night Dave concert, and then I can still watch the games on Saturday and then go to the concert on 8 o'clock on Saturday night. Great.
Well, you're certainly working me into the ground, so I hope that it works out for you. I hope you enjoy your
but
concerts
like I told you earlier, you're the most talented writer at Skyline Sports, even though they only produce 4 stories a year. So
it's exhausting work.
It's just like Gary Smith. He's got his four stories a year with Sports Illustrated. That's just like you at Skyline Sports.
That's right.
You just don't get paid $250,000 per story.
Colter, let's jump into a few things. Listen, today is also, I know it's the start of college football officially, and that's what everybody's paying attention to. It is also the last of the preseason games in the NFL. All 32 teams playing NFL preseason football tonight. And you had an interesting question about who are the best players in the NFL and why. And who the best players are is also somewhat of a reflection, right, of how do you value the positions? I mean, everybody, I think, is basically in agreement that quarterback is the most important or impactful position in football. Certainly doesn't mean the best players in football are all quarterbacks by any stretch, but there is something to be said for the significance of the position. Look, I mean, Adam Vinatieri is one of the great football players of all time, but I don't think anybody's going to put him on a best football players around list simply because he's a kicker. It just doesn't translate. And there's certain guys, certain positions. It's tough now to be a linebacker who is the best player in football. It's tough to be a cornerback who is the best player in football. Often you can be the best in your position, maybe even the best on your side of the ball as a defensive player or something like that, but that often doesn't get in there. But if you were trying to take this individually, take 10, 12, 15 guys and say, hey, these are the best players regardless of position, first of all, who would they be? And B, how would you assess what it means to be the best when you are comparing apples and oranges compared to from what one guy can do to another on the field?
And I think that's one thing I battle with, the way that the NFL's evolved, the way that general management, front office interprets positions, because I think that one thing that's a little bit undersold is the intangible elements of the game. We all look at life and a lot of things in sports through the lens that we are most comfortable with. I was an offensive lineman and a middle linebacker, so that's the way that I watch the game. So the fact that middle linebacker position value has dissipated quite a bit. I mean, think back to the mid-'80s. If we had the pay structure and the resources that we had now, there's no way that Mike Singletary wouldn't be one of the highest paid players in the game.
No doubt.
And now Bobby Wagner and Luke Kuechly are nowhere close to the highest paid players in the game, even though they are among the best players. So I guess the thing I struggle the most about with positional value, it seems like there's this chart, basically, that exists. We all know that quarterback tops the chart, but then after that, left tackle, edge rusher, and way farther down are positions like middle linebacker and running back and safety. We've seen a lot of safeties hold out now because their value has been demeaned. And I think that there's some intangible elements that those positions bring to the table that maybe belie the actual financial value of the position. I mean,
Ray Lewis is going to be the best player in the NFL, and it's not even about where he is. It's the fact that he's on the team and he's bringing you all of the things that he's bringing you in your locker room, to your fan base, to your emotional state as you step onto the field and all of that, right?
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying is a lot of times the tone setters. I mean, Calais Campbell is a guy that's broken the mold, right? Calais Campbell plays up and down the defensive line. It's hard to say that a guy that has the physical attributes of Calais Campbell has broken any mold because he's broken every mold. He's 6'8", 295 pounds, but the guy is unquestionably one of the great leaders in the NFL, and he's gotten chances to do that with multiple franchises because of that leadership.
All right, so who's your list? Who's on your list? Who's the best player in football?
And that brings me full circle to my exact point of this whole thing, is that Aaron Donald is so transcendent that he's completely broken the game and redefined the game, and it's almost as if it's not even a talking point. A 6'2", 280-pound defensive tackle is not supposed to be the unquestionable best player in the NFL.
Well, he's unquestionably the best defensive player in the NFL.
I think that Aaron Donald is unquestionably the best player in the NFL.
But you can't say the words "I think" and "unquestionably" in the same sentence.
It's true. But I just think that the way that you can impact a game with an interior pass rush, the fact that most defensive interior guys are considered
Run stoppers, fillers, whatever.
You're sacrificing for the team.
Yeah.
You're going to eat up the block so the linebackers can be free. You can't double team Aaron Donald. He's too fast. You can't stop Aaron Donald. He is going to beat you. I think that 22 sacks is an unbelievable number no matter where you get the 22 sacks from. It's one of the top 10 or 12 single-season totals in the history of the league. But when you talk about that coming from the interior, that makes the entire rest of your defense elite, regardless of what anybody else does. Regardless of how they perform, if you can get that sort of pressure on the interior of the defensive line, it's unbelievable. But I do think that there's a lot of other guys that are in the argument, and that was the question I had for you, is that while I am skeptical of the positional values, because I do think a guy like Bobby Wagner is as important to his team as anybody in the league, even if his production isn't equated on the same level as a guy like Aaron Donald. My question for you is, the mold basically says that the two most important things in football are passers and pass rushers. So therefore, I think that the guys that would gravitate towards the top of the list are Aaron Donald, Khalil Mack, and Von Miller defensively, and then probably Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Tom Brady, and Drew Brees offensively. What is more important, quarterbacks or pass rushers?
Quarterbacks. It's not close.
You even say that considering that a guy like Von Miller, his hot streak, won the Denver Broncos a championship.
All three of those guys that you just named defensively are better at what they do, as far as I'm concerned, than any of the quarterbacks are at what they do.
Except for Aaron Rodgers.
Maybe. Here's the thing, though. What those guys do, and nobody really seems to appreciate the skill that they have in terms of what they do, because it's very nuanced and it's hard to see. But what you can't argue is the get off, the burst, the bend, the hip angle, the strength, all of those things. And those are both incredibly natural and also incredibly honed gifts and skills that they have. And no one can replicate that. So it's very difficult to sit here and say that Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees is a better football player than Khalil Mack. It's like, well, take your shirts off and let me make the decision. You know what I mean? But the fact of the matter is that what they do, the skill of the position of quarterback is on display every single play, for better or for worse. It comes to the forefront. It comes to the surface every single time.
Right.
And that is... and because it's more important and, frankly, is more difficult, like just because these guys are so good at what they do defensively, it just isn't, there aren't as many things that you need to know or figure out or learn or understand to do those jobs and do them at an elite level. And so the guys who can do it at an elite level, quarterback-wise, are just doing more as a requisite for the job. And so they are better in that respect than the other guys are. I would also say...
Do you really believe that?
Yes, I really believe
because
that.
Drew Brees and Aaron Rodgers know what they're doing on every play. They are dictating what is happening. Khalil Mack has to react to what's happening.
Yes.
That's harder.
No, it's not.
Playing defense is way harder than the NFL. It's way harder than football.
You are wrong about this. You are just arguing to argue. The dictating what it is that you want to do is, in fact... knowing everybody everywhere where they're at. And by the way,
right, but it means you can mentally master it, though, through study, whereas you cannot mentally master what Khalil Mack will have to react to during the scope of the season.
First of all, when you say dictate, I mean it's not 100%. Aaron Rodgers does not go out there and go, okay, I got the pieces where I want them. Now I'm going to throw it here, guaranteed. He does do that from time to time. In fact, he may do that even on a relatively regular basis. But there are plenty of times where what he had in mind to do ain't there, or the thing that he thought was going to be there isn't there, or when it was a front side man-to-man and a backside zone. And, I don't know, all of the different variations that they can come up with that is an attempt by the defense to dictate. The reason the offense dictates, and the quarterback does, is he's got the ball. He makes the choice about what's going to happen. So defense is necessarily reactive.
You can get a perfect score on a test if you study hard enough. If you never knew the questions,
not me.
If you never knew the questions in the first place ever, until the question was asked, and you will never get asked the same question again.
No.
You will not get a perfect score.
That's a poor analogy, because it's not as if you don't have the questions to the test defensively. They're up there just like everybody else. Everybody's standing out there and can see where everybody's at. In fact, the offense is far more often in the place where they're going to be than the defense who's standing up, mingling around like they're hanging out in the foyer of their local synagogues. I mean, my goodness, they're out there just chatting with themselves until the snap of the ball happens, so that the offense can't know where they're going to go. But what I'm saying to you is that the options that are available to a quarterback are many on any given play. And even if he's got a great idea, this play, like I see it, I've got it. There's plenty of plays where the quarterbacks go, gotcha. Before the snap, I know where I'm going and I've got you beat.
Right.
And so that happens, but it also doesn't happen. And by the way, the only reason it does happen is because of the element of study that's gone into it. And so that in itself is a major part of what they do. So you have to be better mentally to be a quarterback than anything else. And also the ability then to actually execute the thing is amazing.
I just think that one of the most overplayed narratives in the NFL is the notion of an elite quarterback, because I don't think it's untrue. I think that when a quarterback catches a hot streak like Drew Brees in 2011, like Aaron Rodgers when the Packers won the Super Bowl, that's a real factor. And when it happens, it is the number one factor in winning at the highest level in football. But I also think that the national media at large has not played up the other side of the coin. There has been plenty of Lawrence Taylor-led teams. The New York Giants that beat the greatest team in the history of football, the New England Patriots. They won because of David Tyree's miracle catch, but they also won because of Jason Pierre-Paul and because of
Michael Strahan
and Justin Tuck. Von Miller was the catalyst to the Broncos winning the Super Bowl. I just think that it's more even than we think.
Your question was not, though, is the defense underrated or undervalued or underappreciated, which I would generally believe that they are.
Sure.
It's simply which one's harder.
What if it wasn't for if it wasn't for elite pass rushes, Tom Brady would have 2 hands full of Super Bowl rings. He's lost in Super Bowls a couple times because of elite pass rushes.
Okay.
Or
he's
not,
also
or not.
1-6. I mean,
no doubt.
He's 1-6. So, I don't know. Here's what I'd also say, though. Aaron Donald, you and I are going to be in agreement, of course, that Aaron Donald's the best. You think he may be the best player in the NFL. He's the best defensive player in the NFL. But I think that is not nearly as clear-cut as you think it is.
Well,
because I think Khalil Mack is all day long in the category of Aaron Donald in terms of what he does.
That's where it gets down to the nuances of the game.
Yeah.
Where do you do it? Because the disruption Aaron Donald causes where he does it.
It's Aaron Donald's unique because, to my knowledge, maybe I'm wrong, but it's never really been done before. I mean, I can't think of an interior pass
the only
rush
guy
like
you
this.
can compare him to is John Randall, but Aaron Donald's substantially more talented.
Yeah.
And to say that out loud is insane, because John Randall is one of the great crazy men that has ever played in the NFL. I mean, John Randall has 132 career sacks as an interior defensive lineman. Crazy. Totally crazy. But
yeah, 20 and a half sacks, too short of the all-time lead, which Michael Strahan had.
Yep.
As we all know. Fortunately, it was fed to me by our producer, too. Appreciate that.
So, okay.
Announcement coming.
So exit this specific topic.
Okay.
Re-enter. So you think Khalil Mack is on par with Aaron Donald?
I think Aaron Donald's better, but I think Khalil Mack is in the tier with Aaron Donald. and it's clearly 1, 2, 3. Von Miller being third, but those guys are separated out and away from everybody else in the NFL as far as I'm concerned at this moment.
Unless J.J. Watt can get back healthy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
And J.J. Watt is
J.J. Watt's amazing.
And J.J. Watt's
wouldn't have
unique
him.
because of also the position that he does it in. J.J. Watt plays a true 5-tech in a odd man front.
Mm-hmm.
So he's taken on double teams like a D tackle, but he can also rush the passer like a true edge guy.
Totally.
Von Miller has a little bit of an advantage because Von Miller plays standing up more than half the time, and he can use his speed. He doesn't have to get double teamed often, unless they chip with a tight end. So tell me this.
Yeah.
NFL Network did a poll of every single GM and director of player personnel in the NFL, and they ranked the quarterbacks by tiers.
Mm-hmm.
Who's in which tier? So tier 1, they named 4 guys. The 4 guys we talked about: Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes.
Mm-hmm.
2 questions. 1, is anybody else in the top tier?
Yes.
Russell Wilson.
Yes.
Okay. You overrate Russell Wilson.
No, I
He's
don't.
on your list of 5 guys that are overrated.
He is not.
Yes, he is. Ryan
He's
Tutel's overrated crew includes Christian McCaffrey, Joe Mixon, Russell Wilson. Regardless, okay, throw him in there.
Okay, I will, because he is.
Rank them. Top 5 out of that number 1 tier.
Right now, it's probably Aaron, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson. That's my list in order.
You got A-Rod's number 1 still, after last year.
Yeah. After his worst ever year where he was still through for like 29 touchdowns while he missed several games and they were awful and he still just balled out, yeah. Like, everybody thinks that Aaron Rodgers had a bad year. If you looked at the numbers, like double blind, whatever, put the numbers up there in a thing, and you'd go, wow, what a great season this guy had. Oh, it turns out it was Aaron Rodgers. He's just bad because it's Aaron Rodgers. And he is the best quarterback there is. He's the best.
Only to argue with you, if you did that exact same experiment with Matt Ryan, you'd think he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league, too.
But I can't help it because I've seen his face. Is that too mean? Because he looks like me,
He looks nothing like you.
He does. 6'5".
You guys have actually nothing
Great
in
physiques.
common. Nothing in common.
Well, I can throw a football.
You're 10 times cooler than Matt Ryan could ever dream of
Listen,
being.
man, I like. Oh, by the way, the other guy who's actually in that top tier, who's not even in football now, is Andrew Luck. But that's an aside. I think so.
See, I think Andrew Luck. This is such a hot take, but I think Andrew Luck. I think Andrew Luck was one of the most overrated quarterbacks in the NFL because Andrew Luck's reputation was based on the potential that he never actually achieved.
He did last year. He did. If you watched in the last half of last year.
What matters more than wins?
I don't know.
Andrew
Being
Luck,
being healthy.
Andrew Luck didn't win on the level he should have won at, given the experience he has. He's no longer an early 20s quarterback. He was almost 30. Last year, Andrew Luck, if Andrew Luck is what everybody thought he should have become when he was the number 1 pick, the Colts should have won 13 games last year, been the number 1 seed in the AFC.
If Andrew Luck hadn't had his spleen ruptured and his shoulder broken and his ankle broken because he had nobody there, then things would have gone a lot differently. But in terms of what he is as a passer, but it's neither here nor there. He's not in the game anymore. Aaron Rodgers is the best at what he does of anybody. Maybe I should say it like this. His skill set is better than everybody else's. He might not be the best at actually doing it because his situation and he himself in the type of person that he is has seemed to encumber that over the last 2 seasons at least. So if you're talking about, look, at the end of the day, it's only and all about what you do out there on the field, then I could be persuaded elsewise. But now all we're talking about is a history lesson. If you're asking me who's the best, though, Aaron Rodgers is the best. He is the best.
It's such a fascinating analysis because it's weighing eye test and singular performance against legacy.
Let me ask you this. You and I, love, capital L, capital O-V-E, Patrick Mahomes.
Certainly.
If Aaron Rodgers was the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback, what do you think would happen? That's all I'm saying. He's got Devontae Adams and everybody here at Stocks as his wide receiver core. Like, that's the group that he's got to throw to. He's got a 30-year-old head coach, and he's got a good offensive line. He's got potentially a decent running back, but he's never had anything like. And by the way, neither has Tom Brady, by and large, save for Randy Moss and of course Gronk. But I mean, he's done it with a lot of guys who haven't been the greatest of all time either, and he's obviously won far more than anybody, including Aaron Rodgers. But all I'm saying is, if you put Aaron Rodgers in a different scenario than the one that he's in, it's going to go very differently. So if we're extracting the guy out and talking about the individual, he is the best player.
It's a double-edged sword because you think Tyreek Hill is better than any receiver that the Packers have, save maybe Devontae Adams. But if Tyreek Hill didn't play with Aaron Rodgers, didn't play with Patrick Mahomes, would you even know who he was?
Well, if he played with Aaron Rodgers, you would.
So much of it's about fit, though.
It is, 100%.
Like, how good would what would we think of Deshaun Jackson if he would have played with Tom Brady or Drew Brees
or played for Andy Reid? That which he did for a while, didn't he? Right in Philadelphia,
he did.
And he made his mark at that time,
no doubt.
So. That's why it's the consummate team game, right? Like and that's why having discussions of individuals like this is, it's fun to do for a while. But there's going to be no consensus on this. The only consensus is that unquestionably Russell Wilson is in the top 5 in the tier with the other 4. It's Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We are at Stockman's Bar, downtown. Come on down. A Missoula original. Hang out with us. Get yourself a couple of Widmer Hefeweizens. Enjoy the afternoon on a Thursday. College football kicking off in a half an hour. You can come down here, watch the games on the screens. A proper start to the college football season down here at Stock's Bar. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. Hey, you want to win tickets? You want to win tickets to the Grizzly-Oregon Duck football game? We'll see about giving those away right after this. Tutel Nuanez, ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television.
Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula is like your paint doctor. They take the pain out of painting. Don't trust your home to anything less than professional PPG paints from Garden City Paint and Glass. Go to visualizecolors.com. Scan in your room photo to see what color combinations will look best before painting. That's visualizecolors.com. Featuring professional PPG paints. Garden City Paint and Glass in Missoula. Across from the Southside McDonald's at 3217 Brooks.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes, too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Town Pump, ooh, pump it up.
There's two things that can really stress a person out. That's hunger and not enough time. Town Pump can help you out with both. They've got your meal waiting for you. 4-piece chicken and JoJo's with ranch, only $5.99. And Modelo 12-pack cans, $11.99. Stop by Town Pump today.
Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
The big skies are open. Go wild with Opportunity Reward Checking. Go ahead, jump, dance, shout. Opportunity Reward Checking will make you do that. Go wild when you get your 1% cash back on qualified debit card purchases. It all starts with an Opportunity Reward Checking account from Opportunity Bank. Visit a branch today to get started. Then go wild and spend your 1% cash back however you want. Go wild with Reward Checking from Opportunity Bank. Some restrictions may apply. Member FDIC.
Hey, everybody, Ryan Tutel, and I'm here with Josh of the Advocates Injury Law Firm. Josh, there's a lot of lawyers in this area. What makes you different?
At the Advocates, we primarily focus on injury cases. That gives us the experience and the knowledge to correctly evaluate your case and work with insurance companies and other attorneys so you get exactly what you deserve to make you whole again. We take really good care of our clients, and we're going to fight for every single dollar you deserve.
Call 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
What are you get when you mix every NFL preseason game. Cold beer and the best wings in Missoula? The Desperado Sports Tavern. The Desperado is Missoula's premier Southside sports tavern. With 32 HD TVs, there's not a chance you'll miss a second of every NFL preseason game. It's time to start watching your favorite players and building your fantasy team at the Desperado. That's cold beer, NFL preseason, the best wings in Missoula, and you at the Desperado Sports Tavern, located on Russell, across from the Y.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon. Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. The Missoula Osprey kept their postseason hopes alive thanks to 2 home runs by Spencer Brickhouse and a 4-run frame in the bottom of the 8th inning to earn a 7-4 home win over the Billings Mustangs Wednesday night. Missoula moved to 5 games back of first place with 9 games to play in the second half of the Pioneer League North race. Billings entered the game with a magic number of 6, while the O's snapped a 5-game winning streak by the Mustangs, who wrap up the 3-game set with Missoula on Thursday night. The rubber match also serves as Indigenous Heritage Night at Ogren Park Allegiance Field this evening. Montana senior linebacker Dante Olson was named the Grizzlies nominee for the William V. Campbell Trophy. The award, handed out by the National Football Foundation, quote, recognizes an individual as the absolute best in the country for his academic success, football performance, and exemplary community leadership, end quote. Schools can nominate 1 senior or graduate student in their final season with a grade point average of at least 3.2. All finalists receive an $18,000 postgraduate scholarship, and the winner earns a $25,000 award. And finally, former Montana Grizz quarterback Nathan Dick has been named the starter under center for the Rocky Mountain College Battling Bears. The 2016 Montana Gatorade Player of the Year led Billings senior to the 2016 AA State Championship. He spent the 2017 season at Montana before transferring back to his hometown and Rocky.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Back to Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana Television. If you are watching us on TV, fear not. We have not become ghosts. We're still embodied, maybe embodied ghosts.
They probably like it better.
Depends on what you think.
They don't have to see us. They only have to listen to us.
What you believe about the material and immaterial realm and the interaction thereof. But we are still alive and well at Stocks Bar downtown, which is why we are not in the studio right now. Feel free, if you're around, come on down, hang out with us, have yourself a Widmer Hefeweizen, say hi to us, and get yourself entered to win some tickets, which we're going to pull here in just a moment. We are broadcasting live through the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, and online at kurtzpolaris.com. Coulter, you fled during that commercial break because you got a little news. So you and I, the only thing we crave more than money is fame. And so what we are trying to do here is just, not be able to even leave our homes because of the throngs of people, at our doorsteps. So what I'm interested in, though, is we got a new commercial coming out.
We do.
And I am looking forward to seeing this thing. But you just watched this thing that we produced. Blake came over to the studio from ABC Fox Television last week. Another Blake by the same name, different guy, put the thing together today. And what do you think? How are we feeling about this thing?
Well, I'm wearing the same shirt I am right now, so that made me feel bad about my stylistic choices because I try to never wear the same shirt in the same season.
You are so weird. I mean, my goodness gracious.
Ryan wears the same shirt every day.
Every day.
Yeah, that's not true. You only wear your maroon red shirt to your Bobcat golf tournaments. No, looks good, man. Makes you look funny, makes me look irrelevant, and that's all that I really want.
Well, I'll look forward to seeing it, and I'll look for it on your TVs coming to a television set near you here very soon. Coulter, before we
little tease though, Shannon Schwain makes an appearance in the commercial, which is good from our Tee It Up segment last year.
Okay.
And tease for next week, Shannon Schwain will be the guest of the ESPN Roundtable. I had a great conversation with her yesterday morning, all about the history and lineage of Lady Grizz basketball, and it was really good. And speaking of that, as I was watching the commercial, I saw Robin Selvig here as well. So
That's
it was
right.
all very serendipitous.
Everything's coming full circle for everybody here. And the other thing, too, which was interesting about having Shannon, it was really fun to talk to her and great to go with her. But like you said, you have Robin here. We got Shannon on the thing next week. She's now in the commercial. I mean, we're just like, we're buds now, We're hanging out. It's like all official.
We're part of the Lady Grizz family.
Before we pick a name out, we're going to pick a name out here to go to the Oregon Duck Grizzly football game here in just a moment. But I want to talk about this game a little bit, Coulter, and I want to talk about it initially through the lens of the game today, which is, or actually Saturday night, the Oregon-Auburn game, which is the game of the weekend, week one. And this is fun, because we've talked about this before. College football gets its whole first weekend all to itself, Sunday night, Monday night, the whole deal. But Auburn-Oregon is the game. Where are they playing this thing? Is it in Arlington? I think it's in Arlington at the Dallas Cowboys Stadium. I'll have to check on that to be sure. It's a neutral site deal for sure, though. But what do you think about the Oregon Ducks just in general this season on a national level?
Well, I think that this right here, you're going to hate me saying this.
Well,
but this right here is the number one argument against a huge 16 or 24 team college football playoff. It's the biggest argument for that the playoffs start week one. Because if the Oregon Ducks win this game, they have an inside track now to perhaps be a Pac-12 team that makes it to the college football playoff.
Right. I mean,
if they lose this game, it's going to be very tough for Oregon or anybody else from the Pac-12
right,
to make the playoffs. This game not only impacts Oregon, it impacts the rest of the league.
Yeah.
If Oregon wins this game and then, say, doesn't win the Pac-12 outright, this win then, though, will still resonate because any team that beats Oregon and in turn wins the Pac-12 will have a win over Oregon who beat Auburn on their resume.
Right.
If Oregon loses this game, then the win over Oregon who didn't beat Auburn, it doesn't resonate as much. The Pac-12 SEC crossover thing is real. I think that Oregon, for the Pac-12 to have a chance to get a team in the playoffs, Oregon's the highest ranked Pac-12 team coming this season. They're number 11. I think the Washington Huskies are number 13.
Okay.
Washington State is somewhere maybe
top 20 somewhere.
In the 20s somewhere. But I think that if Oregon wins this, they can thrust themselves perhaps into the top 10, depending on what happens around the country. And if that's the case, then all of a sudden you're in the mix. And if you lose this game, especially if you get beat down, now you're just in the teens, and you're going to have an uphill battle, particularly because so many other teams in the Pac-12 don't have the national ranking. So there's not a lot of quality wins you can go attain.
Yeah, you're 100% right about that. And the thing that I'm interested in is Auburn, I think, is nationally ranked like 16th, but they are the favorite in this football game. And I think part of that is, when you start slotting teams in, it's like, okay, well, if you're the best team in the Pac-12, you got to be at least a top 10 team or close. And so they give it to Oregon. But if you are the, say, fourth best team in the SEC or whatever they think that Auburn is, well, you can't be in the top 15, but all of a sudden when you're playing head-to-head, you go, oh, Auburn or Oregon? Auburn. Now, I don't know if that seems a little bit biased to me. I think Oregon, I think Coach Cristobal has things rolling at Oregon a little bit. I think they're going to be, continue to improve and be better and better under him. I think he's kind of the right guy in the right spot for that right now. But is he ready to, burst onto the national stage and get a huge win, like you said? But if they do, a win against Auburn, like if Oregon beat Auburn, they're going to be, I don't know, 7th? Right, in the nation, something like that, they'll jump up to. And so I think that there is, good reason to think that, this game puts, like you said, it puts them in that position. That said, I mean, it's Oregon's got to play Washington. They've got to play Utah. They got to win the Pac-12, both their division of it and then the Pac-12 championship game, and still probably have they probably have to go undefeated, right? The Pac-12 at this point, do they have to have a goose egg on the side of the loss column in order to get into the 14 playoff? Do you think that is a requisite at this point?
I think that there's only one scenario where it doesn't happen, and that's if Oregon wins tonight. I think Oregon, if they win tonight and
Saturday.
Saturday.
Yeah.
And then they stub their toe somewhere along the lines, particularly who it's against.
Mm-hmm.
If Oregon wins tonight and runs the table other than losing to Washington, other than losing to Utah, they could be in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
If they lose tonight and then lose to either of those other two teams, they're out.
If they lose tonight, there's no question you have to run the table, period. You have to. But that's also, by the way, it is true. 3.5-point favorite for Auburn, and they are a 16 team to 11 seed, and it is at AT&T Stadium. There is no question, though, Coulter, that this is – people talk about – you make the point like, okay, well, if you expand the playoff, this isn't really a playoff game, but without the expanded playoff, this is a playoff game.
Right.
But it isn't. I mean, that's my point. Like, if Auburn loses this game, there is a way for you to get into the playoffs still.
For Auburn.
And potentially we even said, like, if Oregon was to lose this game and then run the table and be a one-loss team to Auburn, and let's say Auburn finishes the season as a top 10 team,
sure,
and you have one loss week one, you can go to the playoff.
But there's no, you have to consider it like, it's just like when you're playing Texas Hold'em or you're playing blackjack. You always consider that the house has the best hand that they can have. So you always have to consider that the teams that you're not going to play at all that are in different conferences are going to have the best hand that they can have. Mm-hmm. If you lose this game tonight, if you're Oregon, you cannot overtake a 0 or 1 loss LSU team, Ohio State team, Clemson team, Alabama team, Georgia team. You can't.
No question.
And you just lost Auburn, so you can't overtake them either.
If you lose, whoever loses this game, it's a very, very unlikely road to get there.
See, but that's the thing, though.
But you're not out.
It's so much less of an unlikely road for Auburn because of the SEC bias, and I don't necessarily think that the SEC bias is wrong. Mm-hmm. But if you're Auburn, you have multiple games left on your schedule. I don't know what Auburn's schedule is. I don't know if they play all three of the other SEC powerhouses.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you they play at least two. I know they play Alabama. Right?
Yeah.
So if you're Auburn, you lose tonight.
Believe they do play Alabama.
You're Auburn. You lose tonight, and say you lose another time.
Yeah.
Whether it's to Georgia or LSU or Tennessee or South Carolina, whoever it might be.
Yep.
And you're a 2-loss team going to the Iron Bowl. You beat Alabama, you are in the conversation to go to the college football playoffs. Period.
Yep.
Whereas when you're Oregon, you don't have that other game out there.
That way to
because Utah and Washington are both good, but they're not Alabama. They're not Georgia. They're not LSU. So you don't have the way to thrust yourself into the playoff picture.
Well, let's send somebody to the Grizz Oregon game, and maybe that'll be the game that Oregon takes their final fall in.
What if Montana beat Oregon?
I mean, let's save it. Okay, let's just save it. We're going to save that conversation for now. Right now, Coulter, let's pull a name out of this box. Somebody from Stocks Bar, and there's more names in this thing than there has been.
Oh, this one's. Oh, look at this. We even got a Skyline Sports. Can I go?
No, you cannot pull your own card out of there and go to the thing. So to go to the Oregon Duck Washington football game, Oregon Duck Montana football game, September 14th in Eugene, Oregon. It's time to pull a ticket. This one from Stocks Bar. Coulter, who we got?
James Raleigh, James something.
James is good. Congratulations to James. We'll give James a call here and see if he's around and wants to go over to the game. We'll see what we can do. So congratulations to him. We'll pull another ticket if we are unable to track him down here a little bit later on. It is Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. We are live on location at Stockman's Bar downtown. Come on by, have yourself a drink, get yourself a spot next to us here at the table, and enjoy your Thursday afternoon. You can even get some Dobie teriyaki. They got it all going on here at Stocks. Great spot downtown Missoula. We'll take a quick break. We'll come back. We started on how good are the Rams going to be. We will finish that conversation right after this.
Alpine Touch makes the perfect gift this summer or any time of year. If you are traveling, bring a gift that is distinctly Montana and give your loved ones some of the best spices anywhere around. From the Alpine Touch Pick 4 Spice Pack to the All-Purpose Twin Pack to the mouth-watering sunflower shoots to Alpine Touch gift cards. Alpine Touch makes the perfect Montana present. Available at retail locations around the state or online for a limited time. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
At the Montana Club, our goal is to create a menu of mouth-watering food with variety to satisfy any craving. From the garden-fresh ingredients in our salads to our succulent, perfectly grilled Montana Club Angus steaks, we take pride in every detail that goes into preparing your food. Top off your meal with a premium cocktail, wine, or microbrew. Come as you are and satisfy your craving with our home-style breakfast, lunch, and dinner at the Montana Club on Brooks and North Reserve, Missoula.
Mark your calendar for the 4th annual Selway Armory Tent Sale. The lowest prices of the year on guns, ammunition, and accessories, and massive amounts of ammo to stock up for the entire year. September 13th and 14th in the Lolo Shopping Center parking lot on Highway 93. Tons of ammo, guns, and other items at below-cost blowout prices. September 13th and 14th, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Friday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday. The 4th annual Selway Armory Tent Sale at the Lolo Shopping Center, Highway 93. The Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance is here. The world's best-selling off-road lineup is priced to move with financing as low as 3.99% and rebates up to $3,500. Live life wide open in a high-performance RZR. Tackle anything from mountains to mud holes on a legendary Sportsman ATV. Get more done with a hard-working Ranger or take on any task or trail in a versatile Polaris General. The best deals of the year are happening now. See Polaris.com or your Polaris dealer for rebates up to $3,500 and financing as low as 3.99% APR for 36 months during the Polaris Factory Authorized Clearance. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula and Highway 83 in Sealy. Kurtz Polaris is now showcasing all of the new 2020 Polaris off-road vehicles to be the first to get a great deal on brand new state-of-the-art Polaris vehicles at Kurtz Polaris. Online at KurtzPolaris.com. Rebates valid in U.S. through 9/30/19 on new 2015 through 2019 vehicles. Financing offer valid on 2015 through 2020. Subject to credit approval. Offers vary by model. See dealer for details. Always wear a helmet. Never drink and ride.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio for Missoula.
It's a good day to be alive, my friends. Football season is here. At least the college version of it. It is Tutel Nuanez. 102.9 ESPN Radio, SWX Montana. We are live from Stockman's Bar downtown. Come on by, hang out with us. Watch some football on the televisions. Get yourself a Widmer Hefeweizen and hang out for a while. Top of the hour, Sean Rainey going to be bringing you his interview, the ESPN Roundtable with Sean this week. Great to talk with him. Stick around for that. We will get into now, though, the Rams schedule. We are broadcasting through the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, and online at KurtzPolaris.com. Coulter, yesterday we started with the Los Angeles Rams. We've been trying to highlight some of the either regional or sort of impactful teams around the NFL as we count down to NFL season, which, by the way, regular season, 1 week away. Packers, Bears from Soldier Field next Thursday, Coulter. Good gracious. You kidding me? What a day this is going to be. Anyhow, the Rams obviously in the Super Bowl last year, controversially in the Super Bowl, uncontroversially losing the Super Bowl in honestly what was one of the lamer Super Bowls that I can recall. I mean, it was not that fun to watch. Interesting because it was close and all that, but just brutal. Nonetheless, they have a great team, and as you look across the landscape of the NFC, you think that they even with, potential Super Bowl hangover, however you want to talk about that stuff, seem to be unquestionably a playoff team and probably one of the top 4 teams at least, maybe one of the top 2 teams in the entire conference again this forthcoming season. I think a lot of that hinges on Todd Gurley. I'm very skeptical about Todd Gurley just from a health standpoint. Not at all about who he is as a player, unbelievable player, but, the knee, I know what it is to have a little bit of arthritis. And if that's what's going on, sounds like it might be. I mean, I understand it's a pain management thing, but pain is pain, man. And if you can only do what you can do. And the way that went last year and sort of the lack of usage down the stretch, it was very, very bizarre. And so, anyway, that's one part of it. They do get Cooper Kupp back, and that's a significant get. They lose Ndamukong Suh, but they bring in some other folks, Clay Matthews in particular, defensively. So this is going to be a really good team again in Los Angeles with Sean McVay. We started going through, Coulter, their schedule, and you had them through the first 6 weeks at 4-2 against the Panthers, Saints, Browns, Bucks, Seahawks, and 49ers. 4-2 through the first 6 games. So let's finish this thing off as they are on the road in Week 7 at the Atlanta Falcons. Win or loss?
Win.
Okay, 5 wins to 2 losses. Then they host the Bengals.
Win.
Then they are on the road to Pittsburgh against
Win.
the Steelers. Really? Okay. They host the Chicago Bears.
Win.
Boy, they are rolling. Listen, if they get to 8-2 after winning those games, signed, sealed, and delivered. It's a done deal. Ravens at home.
Win.
Cardinals in Arizona.
Win.
Seahawks in Los Angeles.
Win.
49ers in San Francisco, or in the Bay, as it were.
Loss.
Beat the Seahawks, but lose to the Niners.
I mean, I'm just hedging my bets here. I think the Rams are going to be 11-5 or 12-4.
Cardinals at Rams.
Win.
Okay. 12-3. I'm missing one somewhere. But in any case,
I mean, I think the Rams are 11 or a 12-win team. They were a 13-win team last year.
Got them at 12, so we'll say a 4th loss in there. Call them 12-4.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're 11 or a 12-win team. I think a lot of it has to do with the health of their team. I think that the Rams, the sum of the parts are much greater than the individual parts themselves. I think Robert Woods is the most expendable of their skill players, although I think he's good. But they absolutely, for their offense to function, they have to have, in order, Todd Gurley, Cooper Kupp, Brandon Cooks, Jared Goff, healthy. Jared Goff's actually probably the most expendable besides Robert Woods of the group. But Brandon Cooks, they have to have his speed. That changes the entire complexion of what they do. They have to have Todd Gurley because they run so much play action. That's their bread and butter. And they have to have Cooper Kupp because Cooper Kupp is the guy that makes the whole thing work. He's the guy that breaks the mold. Everybody else is running route trees with each other. Cooper Kupp can Cooper Kupp can change the play because Cooper Kupp's running an option route when everybody else is running a defined route. So when Cooper Kupp breaks it off and runs the post, now everybody else does something different or the quarterback has a different read based on what the safeties react to what Cooper Kupp does. That's why he's so special. That's why he's one of the 5 best slot receivers in the NFL.
I want to talk about the Rams through the lens of the NFC West briefly. I'm higher on the Seahawks than you are, but I think
because you're overrating Russell Wilson.
Well, no, I'm not. I'm accurately rating Russell Wilson, and I think that the Seahawks are better defensively than what you think that they are, too. But the point is, the Rams are better than the Seahawks. Nobody's arguing that point in terms of what they are right now here today. Being better doesn't necessarily mean that you end up better, but they are the better team the Los Angeles Rams are. I don't know actually what you think about this. My position is that the Seahawks are clearly the second best team in the NFC West, and I got the San Francisco 49ers and the Arizona Cardinals as the 3rd and the 4th team, and I'm not really sure how to think about that. But the other thing, though, and this is what I want to ask you about, is that I think the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers are 2 of the biggest question marks and wild cards in the NFL. And what they could be, each of them, if things fall right for them, if Jimmy Garoppolo is who a lot of people thought that he was, who, Bill Belichick was evidently fighting to keep over Tom Brady or to be the next, the next in line after Tom Brady, or if Cliff Kingsbury really is the offensive genius and Kyler Murray is, meets his potential as a rookie, all that kind of stuff. These are two teams that are very, very intriguing. Now, I still don't think that these two teams are prepared to make any kind of significant playoff noise, perhaps even to make the playoffs. What I would like to know from you is in a not magic, unicorn pie in the sky, but in a very good case scenario where these teams meet their potential of what they could be this season, what do you think is the ceiling for the Arizona Cardinals and the San Francisco 49ers, and how would that impact potentially the Los Angeles Rams?
That is such a good question, because I honestly think that the Arizona Cardinals have the widest gap between their ceiling and their floor of any team in the last 20 years in the NFL. I really think that. You could totally talk me into Arizona winning 11 games. You totally could. If Cliff Kingsbury's offense takes the NFL by storm, people don't have a reaction to Kyler Murray, people don't have a game plan for Kyler Murray, they could just straight up win 5 or 6 in a row out the gates before somebody makes an adjustment. Then they can just stumble 500 down the stretch and still get to 10 or 11 wins. Or
they could win 2
Kyler
games.
Murray could just be a total flop. I mean, at one point, Kyler Murray was a projected 4th-round draft pick. He ended up going number 1 overall because of a decision to hire a coach that runs an offense for him.
Yeah.
If that offense shreds the league, they could disrupt the entire apple cart. They could be a top 6 team in the NFC and steal a playoff spot from a whole bunch of other teams that think that they're entrenched in that playoff picture, including the Packers, including the Vikings, including the Falcons, the Panthers, on down the line, even the Eagles. The only team I think that is definitively immune from, I think the Rams are a playoff lock in the NFC. I think no one else is. No one. I think there's
not even the Saints? You don't think the Saints are a lock?
I think the Saints are a playoff lock. Yeah, I think the Rams and the Saints are playoff
teams,
locks.
Yeah.
I think the other 4 spots
Bears?
are up for. I don't think so, man.
Yeah, I don't either, because they are in a harder division. That's the NFC North is the toughest division in the NFC, right?
Right. And so much about what
Even more than
happens.
the South.
So much about what happens in the playoff picture is about how you achieve, but also how the teams you play, especially in your division, achieve.
Yeah.
And if they underachieve. Let's make no mistake. The Bears on paper are not that much better than the Vikings, but the Bears whipped the Vikings twice last year. Because the Vikings were way worse than they should have been.
Yeah.
Right? And so when you get those 2 wins, I mean, if the Vikings just split, now the Bears are a 10-win team instead of 11-win team. If the Packers aren't a disaster last year, okay, now the Bears are 9-7 instead of 11-5. That's the difference right there.
That's big.
If the Lions just beat you in Detroit when you're just feeling lethargic or whatever, you go from a playoff team that won the division outright to an 8-8 squad. That's the margin of error in the NFL. But I think that if the Cardinals take the league by storm, especially early on, they could be lights out and they could steal a playoff spot from somebody. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm saying it's a possibility.
Yeah.
I also think that the Cardinals could fall flat on their face and could be right in line, fast tracking towards the number 1 overall pick again. They could be 2-14 if it all goes awry.
And I agree with you on Arizona. San Francisco, I still think is a wild card, but I think that they're still just going to be okay. Like I love George Kittle. I love some of their really young defensive players. And Jimmy Garoppolo, I think, is going to be a good quarterback. That gets you to 7 wins, 8 wins, something like that, but not really a team of consequence in this football season to me for San Francisco. I just don't think they're there.
Well, this is something we mentioned when we were breaking down the Big Sky Conference and predicting teams in college football. The thing that goes lost on the analysis of all of this is not necessarily how good the good teams are going to be and how bad the bad teams are going to be. It's the okay teams, not just singularly what's their record, but broadly, who do they beat? I agree. I think the Niners are between a 6 and 9 win team. Who do they beat, though? Do they sweep the Seahawks? Do they steal one from the Rams?
Right.
Do they beat the Bears? I don't know if they play the Bears or not,
Right,
but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
like,
totally.
When you only have 16 games in a season, when somebody that's just the okay team steals one from you, Like the 6 or 7 wins that the 6 and 7 win teams get, if they come against the contenders, that's the difference between the contenders making the playoffs or not.
Yeah. It is Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. Take a quick break. On the other side, Sean Rainey, the subject of our ESPN Roundtable, an extended sit down with our buddy Sean, the Montana State Television Sports Broadcaster of the Year. We'll talk with him about sports across the state of Montana and life as a sports broadcaster in the state of Montana. Do that on the other side. It is Tutel Nuanez, and hey, it is still, yes, boys and girls, golf season. Let it last. What's better than golf and football happening at the same time? You kidding me? Go to Canyon River. Why? Because, listen, it's a great golf course. It's in beautiful shape. It's a spectacular setting. If you've been out there, you know. It's one of the premier golf experiences in the state of Montana. It also they have a brand new fleet of golf carts. I've been telling you about this with the Shark Experience. And now during football season, what are you getting? Oh, everything. All the scores on the ticker as they come through. All of the satellite radio to talk about all of your teams. They have a channel for every single NFL team on the satellite radio. Touchscreen interaction. Not to mention, of course, the entire course setup. You can set up shots, no distances to hazards, to bunkers, set up a second shot if need a par 5, or as it is for me, a 7th shot, trying to lay up into a par 5, however it might go. It's a great place to play. It's great fun, and the Shark Experience on the brand new set of golf carts with surround sound and Bluetooth make the experience just that much better. They even now at Canyon River have fin cycles. You can go ride on a Degnab motorcycle around the golf course. Talk about adding an element of fun and danger to an ordinary round of golf. That's the way to do it. You go out there, and if you want to go online, CanyonRiverGolfClub.com, you can register tee times there, save a ton of money online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Canyon River is Missoula's #1 golf experience. Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes, too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires, or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires. Doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
No matter how far you may go, there's always one just down the road. Down come who? Pump it up.
There's nothing that goes better together than a Johnsonville Big Dog and an ice-cold beer. Right now in the Town Pump Deli, Johnsonville Big Dogs are only $1.79. And Keystone 15 packs, $8.88. Town Pump, right down the road.
Town Pump, right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
Florence Coffee strives to bring you the best quality in each and every drink, serving a variety of products with no artificial flavoring and no preservatives. With summer winding down and school starting up, stop by any Flowco location for a back-to-school special to taste our lineup of all-natural flavors and go to FlorenceCoffeeCo.com.
The best flavor under the big sky, Florence Coffee Company.
More than 60 years ago, R.J. Rangich opened up Rangich Brothers with one thing in mind: quality and family tradition. Those family traditions continue today and live through our family, staff, and those who buy our RVs. So whether your travels include the shores of Flathead, Glacier Peaks, Yellowstone Geysers, or the hidden gems in between, jump into Jayco and experience the best freedom you and your family will ever know. Only where a handshake means something. Rangich Brothers RV Center.
Hey, folks, Ryan Tutel, and I'm here with Josh of The Advocates. Josh, do most injury accidents end up in court?
Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court through a fair negotiation with an insurance company. However, sometimes it is necessary. I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get a fair settlement. Luckily, most personal injury cases can be settled out of court with a fair negotiation with the insurance company. However, I'm prepared to do whatever it takes to get the right settlement for you.
It's Josh at The Advocates, 640-4444, or online at montanaadvocates.com.
ESPN Radio for Western Montana. KKBU HD3 Stevensville. And 102.9 FM on K275BS Missoula. ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. The Missoula Osprey kept their postseason hopes alive thanks to 2 home runs by Spencer Brickhouse and a 4-run frame in the bottom of the 8th inning to earn a 7-4 home win over the Billings Mustangs Wednesday night. Missoula moved to 5 games back of first place against Stangs with 9 games remaining in the second half of the Pioneer League North race. Billings entered the game with a magic number of 6. The O's win snapped a 5-game winning streak by the Mustangs, who wrap up the 3-game set in Missoula tonight. The rubber match also serves as the Indigenous Heritage Night at Ogren Park Allegiance Field.
We'll be there. Montana senior linebacker Dante Olson was named the Grizz nominee for the William B. Campbell Trophy. The award, which is handed out by the National Football Foundation, recognizes an individual as the absolute best in the country for his academic success, football performance, and exemplary community leadership. Schools can nominate one senior or graduate student in their final season with a grade point average of 3.2 or more. Olson, he's never got anything but straight A's. All finalists receive an $18,000 postgraduate scholarship, and the winner earns a $25,000 award.
And finally, former Montana Grizz quarterback Nathan Dick has been named the starter under center for Rocky Mountain. He was the 2016 Gatorade Player of the Year for Billings Senior. He's now back in his hometown at Rocky.
This ESPN Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Now they always say congratulations. Work so hard to vacation.
Welcome back. Hour number 2. It is Tutel Nuanez, 102.9 ESPN Radio. SWX Montana Television on the YouTube and the Tutel Nuanez channel on the stream. And what's ESPN.com, straight from the bank, your local bank, your opportunity. We are at Stocks Bar downtown hanging out. Got the U.S. Open tennis going on. Djokovic? How come people hate Djokovic, man? I love this guy. They do. He's awesome.
He's cantankerous.
No, that's perfect. We are also broadcasting through the Curtis Polaris Studios. Curtis Polaris at 2904 West Broadway, Missoula Highway 83, and see it online at curtispolaris.com. It's time now for our ESPN Roundtable. It is presented by Olson. Our guest, Sean Ray, a friend of ours, but also a guy who's been a sports television broadcaster in Montana for quite a while now. I mean, 6, 7, 8 years he's coming up on, and went to school at the University of Montana, but from California originally. Fun conversation that we had with Sean.
And the TV business in Montana is market share 180-something out of maybe a possible 185 or 190 markets in the entire country. So kids that are coming here are always kids. They're coming here right out of school. They're signing their 2-year contracts. They're cutting their teeth. They're going off to bigger, maybe not necessarily better places, but I've worked with all sorts of TV guys that have started here and then gone on to mid-high level markets, and even sometimes really high level markets. And sometimes they yearn to come back. Sometimes they get out of the business, whatever it is. But I've always thought it was interesting that so few guys come here, cut their teeth, and latch on. There's been several guys that have done that are from Montana. Mm-hmm. That makes sense. But Sean's from Southern California, and I remember working with Sean, alongside him. We didn't quite cross paths in journalism school, but he's just 2 years younger. So I remember playing hoops with him in college and stuff. And then I remember when he got his first job over there at K-Pax, and then he parlayed that then into ABC Fox, which is now developed into this great sports network that's SWX, which includes us. And so it's been great to watch him grow as a sports broadcaster. It's been great to develop a friendship with him. And now it's been great to work with him professionally, consistently, and have a partnership with him. Yeah. But the thing that I think that sets Sean apart is he's matured a lot as a broadcaster, certainly. But he also he understands the value of the experience of cutting your teeth, but then mastering not only a craft, but a beat, as you say. He has such a definitive advantage over most people in Montana because most of the TV guys, by the time they actually learn it, they're out. Sean's not out.
Right.
Sean has been here for almost 10 years now, and so
Right.
he has a lot. He can talk about Bobby Houck round one and Robin Pflugrad and Mick Delaney and all these other coaches for the Grizz. You know, he's covered Larry Kostovac and Wayne Tinkle and Travis DeCuire. Gives you good perspective.
Yeah.
And I think we have parallels in that avenue because I've had opportunities to leave and I haven't wanted to because I think that being an expert at something that matters to you and matters to the people that follow you is important. And I think that that's where you get the best sort of content and coverage. And I think Sean right now is producing the best content and coverage of anybody in the state of Montana from the TV avenue.
Well, it was a fun conversation. We appreciate his time. Enjoy our ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls with Sean Rainey. Welcome in to the ESPN Roundtable. Happy to be joined by the broadcaster of the year, our friend, and most importantly, great golfer, Sean Rainey. Hi, Sean. How are you, bud?
Anytime I get hang out with you fellas, it's a good day.
Well, it certainly is, and you're welcome in advance for that. Sean, it's great to have you here at the Roundtable. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, some sports stuff and some personal stuff, but wanted to start just with you a little bit because I think people, they see you on television and they hear you out there in the world. And how does a person go about doing what it is that you do? But you've always loved sports. I know that you've been into it from a very early age. But when did you think that okay, sports broadcasting and specifically television was maybe a way that you wanted to go?
I think it might have started when I was in like junior high. I remember watching SportsCenter and listening to games and stuff. And I'd put a game, like a baseball game, on mute, and I would, try to call it myself. That's kind of where it started. Of course, back then, everybody thought you were gonna play professionally, and so that was gonna be the gig, right? You were gonna be a pro athlete.
That's right. Until I turned 9, and everybody told me otherwise.
And then, obviously, like I've just been obsessed with sports and followed it my whole life, and went to the University of Montana. Kind of knew I wanted to get into, sports broadcasting and journalism when I went to college. And stuck with it and was lucky enough to get a job after college and have kind of just hung out here since.
I definitively knew I was never going to be a pro athlete. Never dreamed of it for 1 second. Thought I'd be a pro card broker, maybe a pro baseball manager, never a pro athlete. Regardless, I want to ask you about your dedication and your love of Montana because you're a Southern California guy. You mentioned you came up here from Southern California for school, but so often, especially in the TV business, when the market is such a big deal, the size of the market is such a big deal. You're on contracts, they're short. I've worked with so many TV guys in my 13 years covering the Big Sky Conference, both between Missoula and Bozeman, and so often the guys from out of state come, they cut their teeth, they do great, and then they go somewhere else, and then they rise up, bigger markets, whatever it might be. Your guys done a great job since you started doing this, but you've stayed here. I think that gives you a definitive advantage in just the knowledge you have of all the teams. But why? What about Missoula? What about the University of Montana and prep sports at Montana? All the things you cover. What has kept you here in Montana?
I think it's three things. I think one, so I grew up in Julian, California, which is an hour east of San Diego. There's a little mountain range and then the desert. And we were the small town on the mountain range. About 4,000 people. My high school was only like 225 kids. So I always kind of liked the smaller town. I've never been like a big city person. Like I'm just not into the crowds and stuff. So that's kind of one. Number two is I married a Montana girl. We met.
A good reason to stay.
And a great choice.
Yeah. So she's from Livingston. We met in college, and she's really close to her family, and we all like Montana. And then business-wise, I really like this market because I love covering Montana because it's big enough where people care and it matters and it's a big deal, but it's small enough where, especially now that I've been here long enough, I can kind of do what I want and I don't have there's not a lot of restrictions. I've done stories with doing trick shots with the basketball team. I've done golfing with the quarterback and that kind of stuff. You get the access that you would nowhere near get at a larger school, and I've seen a lot of people in this industry go to bigger places And then I've talked with them, and they say it's really not all it's cut out to be. Like, oh yeah, I'm covering an NFL team, but they don't know. None of the players know who I am. They don't care what I'm doing. It's like, yeah, you're here covering NFL, but you're not like a part of it. You're not close to it. You don't get to. It's just not the same. And I've really kind of taken what they've said to heart, and I've just enjoyed being here, and I enjoy how much emphasis our company is putting on sports, and so that's why I've kind of stayed.
A lot of people, anybody who's traveled for work and traveled a lot, knows that the romantic period of that ends pretty quickly. Nonetheless, especially in football season, you travel a lot with this team, all the places with the University of Montana, and doing the games. You'll be doing the game in South Dakota, Saturday. What's it like? Because I think a lot of people would love to be sort of embedded with the team, staying in the hotel, getting up, eating the meals, doing the thing. And, aside from, I know, being away from your wife, being away from your kids, but the experience of getting on the plane, maybe the bus, whatever it might be, and actually being with the crew going to do this as they sort of build that energy to kick off.
Yeah, and I kind of have to remind myself of that sometimes. I've been doing it for a few years, and even just maybe not even traveling with the Grizz, but just coming into work and remembering, like, oh man, I remember in college when I worked at Perkins as a server, and they wanted me to work from 10 at night to 4 in the morning, and I just dreaded, I'd have to go to work on Friday night. I remember on Tuesday I was dreading it. I never dread coming into work, and like for those Grizz trips, like, yeah, I mean, travel can kind of, get a little bit taxing because, you're going with a giant party, so it's hopping on a bus, hopping on a plane, but yeah, being able to go, I'm flying on the charter with the team, and you're kind of there and close and around it. And the night before, you hang out with some people, like, so yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you do kind of feel like a part of it. You kind of set, it's a weird dynamic for me because I'm like, I host the Grizzly Sports Report, so I'm like kind of invested in it, but at the same time, I'm, supposed to be like neutral, and I'm a part of a set aside from it at the same time. But it's a ton of fun, and you get to cover every single one of these games, so you just get more invested into the season, and makes it a lot more fun.
That was interesting. You're talking about guys that we've known that have risen to cover pro sports. The guys that I worked with at the student newspaper, for example, the University of Montana, one covers the Los Angeles Lakers, one covers the University of Maryland football, one covers the Oregon Ducks, and obviously there's a lot different levels of access or lack thereof, but the guy that covers the Lakers, Bill Oram, I've talked to him about it before, said, what sort of thrill is that to interview LeBron James? And he's like, well, it's not really, because you get to see LeBron James in real life person, but you're one of 60 people standing at his locker. And I think that even though the access has ebbed and flowed at both the Montana schools throughout the years, there really is a real element of personal to it, right? And so, I mean, tell us about some of your just favorite interactions. Do you have anything that stands out to you, or any favorite interviews, or just broadly, what is your favorite part about doing the job that you do?
Ooh, that's a really good question. But it is that. It is establishing, the relationships, with a lot of the players. Man, I'm trying to think of like some instances that really like stand out. I remember like, let me think here. I remember like when, Ryan Burke, he was the receiver from Billings Central, and he retired with concussions, and, he's into golf and I'm into golf, and he's like, hey, you want to do a golf scramble with me after he retired? And so like me and him and Brady Gustafson, when he was still the quarterback, we went and like did a scramble together. And it was just a good time, and being able to like, know these athletes and, and off the field. And I think what's funny about all of this and that, in my job, is people then think that if I'm doing all of this with like the Grizz athletes, that I'm so like pro Montana and not Montana State. But it's so funny because like once you get to know them, that like it's like that at Montana State as well. And there's like a lot of cool like student athletes, and like Denarius McGee like interned at our station. Right. And this is kind of a funny story. I called Jeff Eberly, my guy over there, our sports guy. And it wasn't Jeff Eberly that answered the phone. It was like, hey, Sean, how's it going? What do you want me to do today for work? And I was like, okay, this is not Jeff. I do not. What is going on here? And I was like, okay, I'll just play along for a second. I was like, yeah, what are you gonna, cover Montana State today? What are you gonna do? He's like, oh yeah, I think we're gonna cover that quarterback. I heard that he's like a really cool dude. And he's like, yeah, Sean, this is Denarius. I'm sorry. Like I had to, it's like you get and like I don't know, you get to see firsthand and you get to know like a lot of the athletes, and that's just kind of the cool thing because then people say like you don't root for certain teams to win and whatnot, but you get to watch like especially college kids as they come in at 18, and a lot of them you covered in high school. Yep. And already established a relationship when they were in high school, and then you get to watch them throughout their 4 years and watch them kind of grow as people, and then so it's hard not to just root for them and their individual success and things like that.
ESPN Roundtable with SWX Sports Director Sean Rainey, presented by Paradise Falls in Missoula. I think that's one of the most maybe misunderstood parts of our job. I'm a guy that went to the University of Montana. My brother played for the Grizz, and then I basically had the first quote-unquote big break of my career in Bozeman, covered Montana State, being the sports editor at the Bozeman Daily Chronicle. Used that to then parlay into starting my own company. And then when I came back to Missoula, when I first got to Bozeman, everybody thought I'm a Grizz. I'm going to just muddy the program. And then when I came back to Missoula, oh, that's the Bobcat guy. He's been covering the Bobcats for like 6 years. And I know you go through this all the time too. I think that's the thing that people need to understand is that we are objective journalists who we just call it like we see it. And the way that we report, write, analyze, TV broadcast, give commentary on the radio, we try to just be straight down the middle about all of it. But I think that the other thing that people don't understand, everybody says you're a Cat or you're a Grizz, and that's it. And I just don't think that that's necessarily has to be true. And I think the other thing that people get lost on is they think, oh, you're objective, so that means you're a hater. That means you don't like any of it. And I think that that's not true either. I think that we would all three agree that we don't root for the result of any game. What's going to happen is what's going to happen, and we're just going to bring you the news. We're just going to bring you the result. But, of course, we want the kids to succeed. I'm not rooting for any kid to fail. Why would you want that? I think that's the part that is a little bit misunderstood to me.
Well, I think it's, after doing this for so long, if you got emotionally invested in wins and losses, it would destroy you after, covering it for so long. Like, I've been doing it for, 8-9 years now, and you kind of, it sounds bad, but you kind of become numb to it.
Oh, 100%. The result part you can become completely numb to.
Yeah, and so, and that's kind of even filtered into, I used to be, I still am like a really big Chargers fan, big Padres fan, but even now when they lose and stuff, I'm way more numb to it after being a sports broadcaster for so long than I was in the beginning.
I have experienced that exact same thing too, and it is the difference between being quote unquote just a fan and the difference and having a professional job to do that doesn't really allow you to do that in that same way. And I mean, it matters that you're just like, here's the thing is like people will say, how great is it to do what you do? And in one sense it certainly is, but guess what? I haven't actually tailgated a Grizz football game since before I was in, college. You know what I mean? And that's okay because I love being there. It's great to be in the press box, great to be in the press conferences and watch the game. I've probably watched more Grizz football than I ever have before and actually seen the game, which I didn't all the time before. But it's a give and a take to it for sure.
And you still are kind of working the game. Like a lot of people when I'm like doing the sideline reporting for games, they're like, oh, that must be so cool. And it is. It's awesome. But sometimes I like just shooting highlights because I can just be there and kind of just turn my mind off and kind of more just, I'm just shooting the game. There's no thinking involved. I can kind of like do all my own thoughts in my head about like the game and stuff. So
right.
It's a different perspective.
Tell people about that because the sideline reporter is, first of all, the hardest job to do as far as I'm concerned in terms of doing it well. And second of all, the job that is the most thankless job of all of them when it comes to the actual on-air portion of it. You go, oh yeah, Michelle Tafoya, thanks for your 2.5 minutes. Have a nice day. How's that paycheck? And people have no idea the amount of work that's going on every single play to figure out what is the question that needs to be asked about what happened, what am I paying attention to, and it's very easily to do it to do it poorly like I'm doing right now and asking the question, but tell people about what it's like to sit there while you're actually working even when you're not on camera.
Well, and I think maybe the biggest challenge, let's be real. This is a small market, so technology we don't have the best stuff. So sometimes I remember the very first year that I started doing sidelines. I think it was the very first game. My IFB was not working. So I know that they're tossing to me for a sideline hit, and I'm in like by the north end zone. It is like they're yelling, and I can't even hear when I'm supposed to start talking. And I thought this was my first game. I was freaking out, and so I just like start talking and send it to them and hope that it went and it did not go great. Not at all. I was standing there for 10 seconds before I started talking, and I looked like an idiot. But yeah, you always have to remind yourself it's two things. It's one, you are watching the game from a position that nobody else can. So you try to tell the audience what you are seeing that they can't. So that's kind of number one. And then number two, you kind of use, some stories of players that you know that you want to tell during a game. So a lot of times, like I'll have a giant notebook with lists of potential stories. Hey, if this guy scores a touchdown, if this guy gets a tackle, I'm going to try and tell a story, about this. So it's kind of that, and then just kind of what you hear and what you see, and that's kind of the sideline gig.
Sean Rainey, ESPN Roundtable. Sean, let's talk a little bit about Montana football, the year of our Lord 2019, because even though, as we talked about before, the objectivity of it and working it, you still are very close to it, and you see it every single day. You see it as close. You are the closest person to the program, you and Riley, outside of anybody who's actually in the program. So as you've looked at full cycle year one of Bobby Hauck and coming into year two, the staff, the players, what do you see?
I think it's getting closer to what Bobby Hauck wants. The one difference that he'll tell you compared to teams in the past is that they just don't have the depth. So they don't have the depth at defensive tackle, at linebacker, at corner. The offensive line obviously isn't exactly where he wants it to be. But I think like when you're looking at the starters across the board, like this team is pretty good. But I don't think they have the depth. So if there's injuries at certain positions, they might have some real weaknesses, as the season goes along. I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me.
There's a couple baseline numbers I usually use to evaluate talent, because talent is so it's objective, but it's also subjective, and fit when it comes to talent is essential. But it's my estimation that to be a Big Sky Conference championship team, you have to have between 10 and 12 guys on your roster that have first-team All-League talent. Are they going to actually get first-team All-League? No. And it's a rare year when you have a team like Weber State have 8 first-team All-League defensive players. But there's, like last year, Montana State had, let's say, 4 guys on their defense that had first-team All-League talent. Only one of them ended up actually getting it, and the other 3 were all second-team All-League guys. But they had guys that had first-team All-League talent. Last year, I thought Montana, they probably only had 4 guys that were first-team All-League type talents. I agree with you, though, Sean. I think that the talent has really improved. The other estimation is that to win the Big Sky, I think you have to have 5 to 7 guys that are going to get a shot in the NFL. Likely, most of those guys aren't going to make the NFL. But with the expanded rosters, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys, that's usually what it takes for the Big Sky champ. The Big Sky champ usually has a handful of guys that gets shots in the NFL.
And that doesn't mean in a given year. You're talking about a sophomore who probably is going to get a shot, would be one of the 5 to 7 guys who would be.
Right. Yeah. So in your mind, just going through the Grizz roster off the top of your head, do you feel like they've upgraded to have that level of talent?
I don't know if they're quite there yet. Because when you think back a few years, when you have like a Brock Coyle, a Jordan Tripp, and and all in the same position group, and they're all going, I don't know if they're there yet. I think like right now, I don't know, when you kind of think about the team, Dante Olson obviously will probably be drafted and on a team. I would imagine there's a good shot. I think Sammy Kem has a chance to play at the league. Those are kind of the 2 that pop out. Maybe one of the younger tight ends or something like that.
I think Jerry Lou could be like a special, like a CFL special team type of player, depending.
But I think I think they have multiple guys that could achieve like first round or first team All Big Sky compared to the past.
I'm interested to know this because Coulter went to the University of Montana while Bobby Hauck was the coach the first time around, when they were at their by far most dominant, national championships aside, they lost one home Big Sky Conference game in that entire 4-year stretch.
No, one Big Sky Conference game, period. It wasn't even a home. It was out at Weaver State.
Oh, it was a road game? Okay, well, in any case. But you were not here at that time. When did you get to Montana? When were you going to school?
I was a freshman the year that they lost to Wofford in the playoffs, and Carpenter missed the field goal to win it.
2007 playoffs, which...
Were we all at that game?
Probably.
I was at that game.
There was not a lot in the student section because that was Thanksgiving weekend.
And it was frigid in that game. That was that may be the first time we were all together and we didn't even know. So that was your freshman year. So you were right at the tail end of it, kind of. But as you've go to the University of Montana and then get into this job, what to you has struck you about where the University of Montana football team and program have been over the past 5 to 6 years compared to what maybe the potential could be or should be, without necessarily the memory of the national championships that they won in the late 90s, early 2000s, or the dominance that they had through the aughts.
Yeah, it's like the return to dominance is like I wasn't here for a lot of it. I remember obviously remember rooting for them in the 2 national championship losses.
For sure.
I remember Matt Caesar just ripping them to shreds. I remember that. And then obviously, they had a little run there with Pflugrad when they were pretty good. But yeah, it hasn't but I think it sunk into me when I got here because it was just such a thing that it was like, we're the Grizz, we are dominant, and we're the one of the best programs, if not the best at this level. And it was like ingrained to me as a student from the get-go. So even though I wasn't here for that long of it period wise, I feel like it really kind of resonated early.
Still got embedded.
Yeah, and so you feel like this whole stretch where they haven't been as good, that doesn't seem like the norm, if that makes sense.
It's such an interesting analysis, and I think it's why we spend so much time on Tutel Nuanez talking about it. And Sean doesn't necessarily have as much of an open platform to debate the whys, but I know you were, like you said, you're only here for the last couple of years of Bobby Hauck, but you did get to see it up close and personal. And we talk all the time about how they're not quite as good. And I think that's a testament to the standard Montana set, because Montana has made the playoffs.
It's hard to be not quite as good as never losing.
I mean, Bobby Hauck went 47-5 against the Big Sky Conference the first time around. Pretty good. But in your mind, what's missing? Can you put your finger on what it is?
I think teams are getting better, but I also think just the style of college football lends itself to more teams being good. So back in the day, not that many teams ran spread offenses. A lot of it was, we're going to line up and we're going to run the ball at you. And so if you are the bigger, better, dominant team, it's just way easier to dominate those opponents because you're better. But once you start spreading it out, it kind of is an equalizer for teams that maybe aren't as big and physical and strong, and you can't get the biggest, strongest guys. So I think it's been teams getting better, more talent being out there, and just the style of college football has lent itself to more teams. And that's why we still obviously see the Alabama and Clemson. It's kind of been them primarily, but that's where I think you see the UCFs and some other teams. I just think that the style of college football has lent itself to lesser programs that can't maybe get certain dudes being able to do that.
So interesting, because Montana as a state kind of has a type of kid that it can deliver every time, bar none. That's the tough, big, strong, overachiever.
Yeah, Montana's not going to produce the freak athlete wide receiver that often. They're not. It's not going to. They're not going to get the 6'5", 220-pound wideout.
Right.
That's just not what it's going to be.
So when football is Big Ten football, Montana's great. But then when football is Pac-12 football or SEC football, maybe ACC football, Big 12 football, it doesn't mean that it's not that great. But it's not. You have to be variable.
ESPN Roundtable presented by Paradise Falls. I want to extrapolate on that point though, because I do think that there's been so much debate over two different topics. First of all, why it's essential to recruit Montana kids if you are the two Montana schools, and there's varying opinions on all of that. And also, what makes Bobby Hauck so good? And I've said this on Two Tail Nuanez multiple times, but I think that Coach Hauck has a standard of excellence that he refuses to delineate from. I think that is the number one factor. But I also think that the way that Bobby Hauck runs his program, it's to demand the development of every single person in the program. And I think that's why recruiting Montana kids and Bobby Hauck being the head coach at Montana goes hand in hand. You also see a very good fit in that element with Jeff Choate at Montana State right now as well. But you're not going to recruit a kid. The Gabe Sulcers of the world only come along every handful of years, and the Matt Millers of the world only come along every decade if you're lucky. Guys that are actually plug and play, ready to go to play D1 football. I say this all the time, but Colt Anderson was on a team that won 0 games our senior year of high school. When we heard Colt Anderson was walking on the Grizz, we laughed. We were like, "What?" And now Colt's a good friend of mine who had a 10-year NFL career. You look at look at a guy like Chase Reynolds. Chase Reynolds was so overmatched when he first got to Montana. He went on to become an NFL draft pick that played in the NFL. Mark Mariani. And I think it's not a coincidence that almost every single guy that Bobby Hauck took that put in the league was either a partial scholarship guy or a walk-on guy, because he cultivates a culture that develops kids at such a high level. And I think that's where, if you have the right coach, that's why recruiting Montana kids are essential, because you have guys that are so raw, but when they come in, if they go to work and do the work. I mean, Shannon Schillinger was a backup until his junior year, and then he got drafted in the 6th round 2 years later. It just shows you what the diligence and the player development does at this level.
Well, and for a story kind of playing off of that, when Bobby came in to do the first Grizzly Sports Report, that's when, before the cameras are rolling, I asked him how one of the, the freshmen that were doing that I covered, in high school. And, he's very honest with me in those situations. He goes, "Oh, he's doing terrible." Like, I'm not going to lie. He's just, and he used some other words. But he's like, he's young and I'm never going to give up on a young kid. So, and that goes to show you that, right now, he's nowhere near seeing the field, but that doesn't mean that I can't turn him into being good by the time he's a junior, senior. And that kind of plays off, that story kind of plays off just what you said.
Well, it's like Ryan asked Bobby Hauck before the second day of fall camp, he said, "How would you evaluate just the status of young guys?" I think that the young guys are operating like I want them to, and the young guys are the opposite. They look like the young guys are the opposite.
That's exactly what he said. That's exactly what he said. Sean Rainey, the subject of our ESPN Roundtable. Last question for you, John. Best thing about your job is what?
The best thing about my job is I never feel like I'm working. Like, I wouldn't ever call it working. I never dread going to work. I always enjoy coming in every day and getting to do what I do, and sometimes you never know what that's going to be, and the variety of things that you get to cover and the variety of things that you get to do. I mean, that's going to be the best thing about it. I don't complain about coming to work, and a lot of people in this country, I know, complain and don't enjoy what they do, but they do it because they kind of have to, and I am lucky enough where I don't feel that way.
Sean, thank you very much.
As always, enjoyed it. Thanks, fellas.
Sean Rainey, the subject of our ESPN Roundtable. Our appreciation to Sean for coming on with us. Thanks to Paradise Falls for sponsor at Paradise Falls. Present the ESPN Roundtable weekend and week out culture over there on the south end of Missoula near the intersection of Brooks and Reserve Street. 18 rotating beer tap handles, a bunch of great places. I love the rooms over at Paradise Falls. You can sit inside, outside in the gazebo. Obviously, all the television's ESPN3 capabilities. Late happy hour if you're into that. Great spot to sit on the south end of town, watch some games, enjoy a night out with friends.
Might be kind of hard to watch a Grizz game this weekend, but if you need a place, I guarantee you Paradise Falls has it. They have ESPN3 capabilities, ESPN Plus capabilities, 30 big screen TVs. Whether it's the Grizz, the Bobcats, any FBS game, any NFL game, Paradise Falls got you covered. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, open 7 a.m. till midnight, Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week. Paradise Falls, 3621 Brook Street in Missoula.
Back after this, predictions for the weekend. Hi, boys and girls. Ryan Tutel
and Colter Nuanez
from Tutel and Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio, from your very favorite Tutel and Nuanez podcast, and now officially Gracious Mercy on television statewide.
That's right. We've been doing a radio show and a podcast since August of 2017, and now it's time for us to expand our reach into statewide television on SWX.
We're on SWX every weekday from 4 to 6 live on your televisions. It's available on channel 199 on Spectrum Cable or on 23.3 on your antenna television, and you can download the Watch SWX app and get us that way on your phones and devices as well.
And of course, we'll still be right here, 102.9 ESPN Radio from Missoula and the Bitterroot Valley. And as always, you can find the podcast, the live stream, and everything else you need, 1029ESPN.com.
Colter, do you think that we're spreading ourselves too thin? Are we going to saturate these people and they're just going to start hating us, the inevitable backlash of the great heights to which we have now attained?
No chance. Tutel Nuanez, Montana's only statewide sports talk show.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
Come check out the best late happy hour in town at Paradise Falls. Offering $3 micro brews, half-price cocktails and appetizers, and much more. Paradise Falls late happy hour runs from 9 until 11 p.m. Monday through Thursday nights. If you're in the mood for an evening cocktail or you're just getting off the golf course, swing on by 3621 Brook Street. As the days grow longer, come enjoy the sunset on Paradise Falls' spacious back deck while enjoying a beverage. Paradise Falls, located at 3621 Brook Street, open 7 a.m. to midnight. Paradise Falls, Missoula's coolest hotspot.
This is Mike Nugent with Berkshire Hathaway Home Services. Berkshire Hathaway provides Western Montana with full-time real estate professionals for you whenever you need us. Our reputation as the state's most knowledgeable and available real estate group has helped build unmatched trust in the Garden City and statewide. If you have been thinking of making a real estate move in the short or long term, give me a call. No pressure, no expectations. Just professional opinions and service at whatever pace you are comfortable with. Give me, Mike Nugent, a call today, 531-1802. And remember, every question is good to ask.
Hey folks, Ryan Tutel here, and I'm with Josh from the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, if our listeners have been injured in an accident, how can you help?
We're here to help you after a car accident by negotiating with insurance companies, recovering lost wages if you have any, and even getting you into a rental car if you need one. Call us today for a free consultation, and we'll get started helping you right away.
If you need help, get a hold of the Advocates. Call Josh at 640-4444 or online at montanaadvocates.com. You deserve an advocate.
ESPN Missoula Sports Center.
Good afternoon, Ryan Tutel, Colton Nuanez, ESPN Sports Center. The Missoula Osprey kept their postseason hopes alive thanks to 2 home runs by Spencer Brickhouse and a four-run frame in the bottom of the 8th inning in a 7-4 win over the Billings Mustangs Wednesday night. Missoula moves 5 games back of the first-place Stangs with 9 games remaining in the second half of the Pioneer League North race. Billings entered the game with a magic number of 6. The O's win snapped a 5-game winning streak by the Mustangs, who wrap up the 3-game set with Missoula tonight. The rubber match also serves as an Indigenous Heritage Night at Ogren Park Allegiance Field.
Meet me there. Montana senior linebacker Dante Olson was named the Grizz nominee for the William B. Campbell Trophy. The award, which is handed out by the National Football Foundation, recognizes an individual as the absolute best in the country for his academic success, football performance, and exemplary community leadership. Schools can nominate one senior or grad student in their final season with a grade point average of at least 3.2. Olson, he's got perfect grades. All finalists receive an $18,000 postgraduate scholarship, and the winner gets a $25,000 grand prize.
And finally, former Montana Grizz quarterback Nathan Dick has been named the starter under center for the Rocky Mountain College Battling Bears. The 2016 Montana Gatorade Player of the Year led Billings Senior to the 2016 Class AA State Championship. He transferred out of Montana and back to his hometown.
Missoula Sports Center is brought to you by Aspen Sound.
Welcome back, ESPN, SWX Montana Television. It is Tutel and Nuanez. We are live from Stockman's Bar downtown this afternoon. Great to be with you. Thanks for spending some time with us. We are Happy to be there. We are broadcasting through the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy. Online at kurtzpolaris.com. You want to call? 329-1899 is the phone number. All guests join us via the Rankins Brothers RV phone line. Our interview ran a little long, so we got a couple of shortened segments. But, Coulter, I want to take a moment here, first of all, to recognize Arizona has already lost to Hawaii. UCLA is losing 7-0 to Cincinnati. The Pac-12 off to a very average start. And by average, I mean awful.
Shocking.
They actually, here's what is shocking. UCLA, they're on the road in Cincinnati. They are the actual betting underdog in this football game. I mean, it's not shocking, but it's just, Cincinnati and a Pac-12 football team, specifically UCLA. Okay, that's all. It's interesting.
5 years ago, Mike Kramer told me that they'll be nothing but, Mike Kramer, former Montana State, Eastern Washington, Idaho State head coach.
Yep.
I'm telling the people, not you. I know you know.
No, but you're right. That's fair.
He told me.
Reset it.
He told me football will never be anything but parity, rot, and mediocre in the West because the quality of life in the West is too good. He believes the Arizona State theory that I've spouted, Arizona State's never going to be anything better than 6-6 or 7-5 because it doesn't matter what happens at Arizona State if you win or lose because you still get to go to the best party in the world every single Saturday night. And it's like Mike Kramer said, there is no such thing as the incredibly tough, crazy guys that the whole difference here.
Don't tell Terrell Suggs.
Every team in the country, every Power 5 team in the country has the ability to recruit 5-star quarterbacks, 5-star receivers, 5-star running backs. The difference is the lines. And Mike Kramer's whole theory was when you're recruiting linemen from desperate personal situations in the backwoods of Mississippi or Georgia or LSU or Florida, that's completely different than recruiting kids from Rancho Cucamonga, California. Like if you live in the suburbs, what do you actually have to play for? And I think it's a little bit of an extrapolated and exaggerated theory, but every year that parity is just entrenched in the Pac-12 and throughout the rest of football in the West, and every year that there's nothing but mediocre play, it resonates with me even more.
All I care about is the fact that I'm sitting at Stockman's Bar and there's football on television, and it makes me very happy. We'll take a quick break. Coulter will give you his predictions for the weekend since he is out tomorrow. MSU, Montana, what's going to happen? We'll tell you right after this.
Alpine Touch has been providing you with the distinct seasonings you know and love for decades. Now, Alpine Touch has something to help you unleash the freshness of all the delicious flavors you need to spice up any meal. Check out Alpine Touch's new coarse grinds, unleashing the fresh taste of the garlic pepper or all-purpose seasonings to please any nose or taste bud. Coarse grinds can be purchased by the pound at retail locations around the state or at alpinetouch.com. Use the code ESPN10 at checkout to get 10% off any online order. Alpine Touch, Montana's special spice.
Hey folks, Ryan Sutel here, and I'm with Josh of the Advocates Injury Attorneys. Josh, what are people left dealing with after an accident?
Well, quite a few things, actually. We see people that are in pain. They still need to get to work. They need to raise their kids, and now they have to take time to go see doctors and other healthcare providers. They're frustrated with working with the insurance companies and getting the runaround. We'll take on the burden of dealing with the insurance companies so you can get the best settlement possible and get back to your life.
Find your advocate online at montanaadvocates.com. There are a lot of lawyers. You deserve an advocate.
We ate a lot of steaks before we came up with the Montana Club's Private Reserve Cut Angus. It's as good a steak as you're going to get. Our Private Reserve Cut Angus is specially cut for us. And with our custom seasoning, it has a flavor that's absolutely incomparable. We're confident that it will satisfy the most discriminating steak customer for an unrivaled steak experience. Real Montana, real food. The Montana Club, North Reserve, Missoula.
Mark your calendar for the 4th annual Selway Armory tent sale. The lowest prices of the year on guns, ammunition, and accessories, and massive amounts of ammo to stock up for the entire year. September 13th and 14th in the Lolo Shopping Center parking lot on Highway 93. Tons of ammo, guns, and other items at below-cost blowout prices. September 13th and 14th, 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. on Friday and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. Saturday. the 4th annual Selway Armory tent sale at the Lolo Shopping Center, Highway 93.
Everybody knows that high school sports generate suspense and drama.
They also generate higher grade point averages, stronger work habits, and greater self-esteem.
Everybody knows that high school sports give us more value for our entertainment dollar.
They also give us leaders committed to strengthening communities right here in Montana. The true value of playing sports in school can't be measured in wins and losses or dollars and cents. Studies show that participation in sports, along with other extracurricular activities, is one of the best ways to teach leadership, cooperation, accountability, and other invaluable life skills. Don't just stand on the sidelines. Encourage the young people you know to get in the game. When you do, you will be helping them get ahead in life. High school sports, a winning part of a complete education. This message presented by the Montana High School Association and the Montana Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association.
If it matters to Missoula, it matters to us. Ryan Tutel and Coulter Nuanez on 102.9 ESPN Radio.
As we wrap it up on a Thursday afternoon, I got a couple of rapid-fire questions for Colton Nuanez as it pertains to college football, which is...
That's not what I want to talk about.
Rocking and rolling.
I want to talk about my pilgrimage.
No. You can talk about Dave Matthews on Tuesday. By the way, no show
I ain't
Monday.
Gonna be here ever again.
Labor.
This is it.
Oh.
That's my last show.
We're broadcasting live through the Kurtz Polaris studios. Kurtz Polaris is at 2904 West Broadway in Missoula, Highway 83 in Sealy, online at kurtzpolaris.com. If you missed anything in the show, you can listen on the podcast. The Tutel Nuanez podcast available, well, everywhere. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can listen to the Tutel Nuanez podcast thanks to the Wingate by Wyndham Hotel. We are at Stocks Bar enjoying football being back, college football, Cincinnati, UCLA on ESPN television, most specifically. And Coulter, let's quickly, I want to talk to you about the Montana-South Dakota game and the Montana State-Texas Tech game. Let's do Montana State-Texas Tech. There's no mystery here that Texas Tech is going to win this football game. The question is, what do you say, 1%, 2%? That Montana State actually wins the game?
Montana State is significantly more talented and has way more potential and expectation than Portland State did when they went and beat number 24 Washington to kick off, or number 24 Washington State to kick off the 2016 season. All I'm saying is anything can happen.
Okay.
But I totally agree with you. I think that Texas Tech is the overwhelming favorite. I think the Cats have a really, really uphill battle.
Let me put it like this. It's not impossible, but nobody's picking Montana State to win the football game.
Nobody.
Okay, but what do you expect out of this game? Granted that it's a first game and it's hard to place expectations of any sort on a first college football game.
Well, I expect Montana State to actually head early on because of the fact that they have half a dozen players, including 3 of which who are brand new to the team, who have way more physical talent than anything Texas Tech could ever expect. Texas Tech's not expecting Bryce coming up. They have film on. They don't have film on Monty Williams. They have no film on Jason Scripos. They have guys on their front 7 of their defense that are exceptionally talented. I also think Montana State's going to pull out all the stops in terms of the variety of packages they're going to run offensively. They're going to run 4, 5, 6 quarterbacks, and they're going to run a bunch of crazy offensive schemes. All that said, Munchie Filer being out is the biggest injury of either of the Montana and Montana State teams going into this opening weekend. Munchie Filer is the best cover corner in the state, and he's out, and that's going to hurt Montana State against Texas Tech.
That game at 2 o'clock Mountain. Montana, South Dakota, 1 o'clock. Be on ABC Fox Television. And Coulter, who you got in this one? Because this is a very even matchup, particularly on the road. In fact, South Dakota State a 3-point favorite in this game on the line.
South Dakota, yeah, not South Dakota State. That was
sorry, South Dakota.
I honestly think the Grizz are gonna win big. I think South Dakota is. I think they were really bad on defense a year ago, and I think that the new defensive coordinator will find his footing.
Okay,
but I don't think that he's gonna. I don't think that South Dakota's going to be prepared for the array of weapons that's going to get thrown at them. I think Montana is going to get the ball in, added up. I think 11 guys could touch the ball on offense besides Dalton Steed, the quarterback. I think that 3 tight ends, 3 or 4 running backs, and 5 or 6 receivers could all touch the ball on Saturday. I think that's going to have South Dakota's head spinning. I think the fact that it's indoors and Montana has all of the last 9 months of brooding to motivate them. I just think that Montana's going to come out, hit the gas pedal early. I expect the Grizz to win by 3 scores.
The last play that Montana has played was the perhaps worst single moment in the history of Montana football, certainly in Montana history. So brooding is the right word. Boys and girls, thanks for being with us on a Thursday afternoon. We will be back. I will be back tomorrow, Friday. Coulter will be out. Regime Seabrook going to join me on the show tomorrow. Looking forward to that very much. Have a wonderful Thursday afternoon. Enjoy college football. We'll see you tomorrow. ESPN Radio, SWX, Montana Television.
Canyon River Golf Club is a must for any golfer in western Montana. Tucked away in a spectacular setting along the Clark Fork River in East Missoula, Canyon River offers one of Montana's best championship golf experiences. And Canyon River is happy to announce their new fleet of golf carts, which include the Shark Experience, an interactive GPS giving dynamic distances and touchscreen interaction to help you play your best. Plus, with Bluetooth, radio, and surround sound, you can enjoy yourself between holes, too. Book online at CanyonRiverGolfClub.com. Missoula's best golf, Canyon River.
More bedrooms, a big yard, better commute. Whatever your reason to buy a new home, it's the right reason. In a tough housing market, the smartest thing you can do is pre-qualify for a loan before you start looking. Farmer State Bank makes it easier than ever to start the loan process with online checklists, forms, and calculators. Your dream home is out there. Get started today at farmersebank.com. Farmers State Bank, an equal housing lender and member FDIC.
Les Schwab is proud to introduce 2 of our best tires ever, just in time for summer. There's our exclusive Reputation, a high-mileage premium passenger tire we believe has the quietest, most comfortable ride ever. Or our exceptionally quiet and smooth all-season traction tire, the Open Range AT. Get up to $150 instant rebate on 4 backcountry MT or AT tires, or $50 on 4 road control passenger tires. Les Schwab Tires, doing the right thing matters. Cannot be combined with other offers. Limited time. Terms and conditions apply. Details at leschwab.com.
On Russell, across from the fairgrounds.
Have you been hurt or disabled? Are you missing time from work and not sure what to do? I'm attorney Chris Helmer.